And welcome to Around the Ozarks Spotlight. Each week we uncover stories behind the people who live and work here in Southwest Missouri, those individuals with entrepreneurial spirit who work to better the lives of others, or put pen to paper to write books about the stories and history of the Ozarks and its people. I'm your host, Scott Meier. Today we're going to explore the world of invasive species affecting the Missouri lakes and rivers with our personal expert, expert, Missouri Department of Conservation media specialist, Francis Skalicky. And Francis, how are you?
I'm doing fine, Scott. Always glad to be on this show and always glad to get information out there.
Well, you've got a lot on your desk in terms of all kinds of information, but we had talked a little bit about prior to starting today's podcast that I've had a little familiarity with one of the two subjects we're going to talk about today. If you recall, I moved my family to the Ozarks about 8 years ago now from the Detroit metro area, where we're surrounded by, in that case, the Detroit River, Lake St. Clair, which connects with both Lake Huron and also Lake Erie, and even somewhat Lake Michigan, which were all affected by the invasion, if you will, of the zebra mussels, which go back to about, I'm going to say it was almost 25 years ago, I think, when they were first finding them discharged out of the ships that come from across the ocean into the Great Lakes.
You know your zebra mussel history very well, and yes, Lake St. Clair is the starting point, but the Great Lakes broaden it out a little bit. That's where they started. They came down the Mississippi River. Currently in Missouri, zebra mussels are found in the Missouri River, in the Mississippi River, in Lake of the Ozarks, in Truman, and in Bull Shoals. And, again, it's glad we're talking about this because zebra mussels is something that people hear a lot about, especially in the summertime, but they think, what is the deal? Why should we be concerned? So I'm glad we're talking about it.
Well, what's interesting, and Francis, I was really looking forward to our conversation today. Initially, as you can imagine, the sirens went off. Oh my gosh, here they come! But at least in the Great Lakes, or at least certainly Lake St. Clair, they've really done a number on cleaning up the pollution in the lake. It's a big lake. They call it the sixth Great Lake. And it increased the walleye population, increased some of the other fish species. Now, I know it did also increase, I think, in some cases, a little more algae in the water because it really cleared up the water. Is that fair to say that there is
Scott, I tell you, I did not give you a script, but you could not be hitting on the talking points any better than if you will. So yes, you do know. Water clarity is one of the things that comes up with zebra mussels. And yes, in the Great Lakes region, we hear about that. Hey, water's clearer. It looks cleaner. What's the big deal? Well, the big deal is that they're eating a lot of the microscopic and barely visible organisms that are part of the fish food chain. So when you knock that out, it hurts a lot of the fish species. So, there may be, like you mentioned, some that are doing all right, but overall not only the sport fish species, but all of it. But I mean, if you want to put it in a fishing viewpoint, the sport fish species, it's knocking out a big part of their food chain by their feeding. What they do, they feed, like I say, on the microorganisms and the barely visible organisms. So when you take out the food chain, obviously the animals, in this case the fish above it, don't do well. So that's the problem from the biological standpoint. Now there's also a problem from the economic standpoint. These mussels can get in these huge clumps and they can actually form on city water systems, filtration systems, stuff like that. They can get, I've got some numbers here, reach a density of 30,000 to 40,000 individuals per square meter. What they do, we probably get in biology a little bit later on, but what they do, they attach themselves so they can feed as the water flows over this mussel and their mouth is open. They feed on whatever water's flowing through. Well, as they attach themselves to hard surfaces, they clump up. Other mussels attach themselves to mussels that are already attached there because that too is a hard surface. So these huge clumps form. And these clumps can, among other things, as I said, they form on water city managed water filtration system. And there is a town, I think it was in Michigan, I forget the name of it, but zebra mussels actually shut down the water system for a while. I think it was back in the 90s.
Right, when
So
they were first figuring this out. That's
right,
right.
right. In addition to the biological and recreational problems these cause, there's also an economic problem these can cause, which is another reason why we don't need them. We don't want them here in Missouri.
Well, they're in Missouri,
I
and
know.
that's why you're here. Is you're going to tell us all about it. I did not realize that they found their way into Missouri through the Mississippi River. Does that mean
Right.
they're also in the Missouri River as well?
Yes, they are in the Missouri River. They came down the Mississippi, and since the Missouri flows into the Mississippi, the villagers, which is the reproductive offspring of them, we presume they went upstream. They've also got, as I said, into the Osage River. Reservoir wise, we found them in Lake of the Ozarks, in Bull Shoals, and in Truman. But you're right, they are here. So the as far as how to keep them out, well, that ship's kind of sailed. So the next step is how to keep them from spreading, and that's where boaters can come into play, and that's where the information comes in. One way they spread is they attach themselves to boats, boat motors, boat parts. And so if you fish in a lake, and if you're there for a period of time, say you're camping there and you fish there several days, like a lot of people do,
Sure.
over that time, if zebra mussels has attached to your boat, you take it out and then you fish at another lake, you can transport those villagers to another body of water. So the mantra, the advice, if you will, clean, drain, dry. That's what we tell voters. Clean your boat thoroughly when you get it out of the water at that site. Drain it of all the water, pull all the plugs, let all the water dry, and then dry it. Make sure it's completely, when you get it home, park it in a sunny spot, let it there for as long as possible. Just let it get really dry. Let that good old sun dry it out, and that's the best way to keep it from spreading. As we said, yes, they're here, so we can't stop them from getting here, but we can still stop them from spreading.
My guest today on Around the Ozarks Spotlight, I welcome back Francis Skalicky. Francis is with the Missouri Department of Conservation as a media specialist, but he's so much more because he's got such deep knowledge. We're talking about invasive species which know no boundaries. The zebra mussel can find its history where, Francis? Where did they originally
Zebra
come
mussel is related to the Caspian Sea, that area, kind of Europe, Eurasia, I guess you'd call it. And it came over here, as we said, it was first discovered in the Great Lakes. It came over in commercial ships. When they released their bilge water, they released it into the lakes. There was zebra mussels or zebra mussel villagers in the bilge water of these ships. And as that water got in there, it introduced the zebra mussels into the lake. And one reason they spread so much more so than other mussels, this is kind of interesting. This is a whole show by itself. Freshwater mussels, the native mussels in North America, they have a fish species that they specifically attach to, and it's part of their lifestyle, or of their life cycle.
Right.
But zebra mussels don't have that host fish. What they do, they basically just spread. They're called villagers. They're offspring. They just spread it out into the open water, and that's one way they spread. They can get in a large area in a short amount of time, and that's also a way these villagers can attach to trailers, to boats, to anything we have, even the kayaks, canoes, things like that.
Sure.
And so when we take them out of an infested area, take them to a non-infested area, if we don't do the clean, drain, dry, we may have unknowingly spread zebra mussels to a new area.
What's fascinating, and you know so much about the biology of these things. Now, if they came out of the sea, they were salt water. So how do they come out of bilge water, that's salt water, into fresh water and adapt? How does that happen?
That, Scott, you've stumped me on that. You've gone too far down into the biological weeds for me. I don't know that, but I do know. I don't understand how it happened or why it happened, but I do know how it happened. And so I'll just stop at the how. And that is how. And you're right. It's, some organisms, they do have this saltwater, freshwater transitional skills. And I guess this is just one of them. So.
It really is amazing. Now, some folks, and I don't have access to a picture of it. How would people recognize a zebra mussel, or is that even important?
Well,
Is the cleaning and the draining and the drying really what you're trying to get to? Because there's other
yes,
invasive species. We're going to talk about something else here
right,
after
right,
the break, but
right. The
these
cleaning, drain,
things.
dry is important. You're right. As far as how to recognize them, they're about the size of a fingernail. They have stripes on, so that's why they're called zebra mussels. They have these stripes on their shell,
Okay.
and as I said, they form in clumps. I mean, one individual zebra mussel, I mean, it's definitely visible, but it'd be small. As I said, it's about the size of your fingernail. The most visible way we usually see them is in clumps. They form on, and we've got instances of them actually on boat parts. It's been parked in water that's infested, and then they pull up the boat and it's on the motor, the motor, the part of it that's been under the water, or the trailer. But the big thing is not look for them, but prevent them from spreading, because as I said, and there is another species we'll talk about in a little bit, same steps for them, but if you see them or not is not important, because maybe you can't see them because maybe they're in this villager stage, but yet
Sure.
by doing the steps, you're being a good steward of the lakes, you're being a good recreational, partner to the conservation department, and you are keeping them from spreading.
Now, we live in a world of don't judge me, and we're judging the zebra mussel. Is there anything good about them since they're
Well,
here? It sounds like they're
uh,
here for good.
yeah, that's the thing. We really can't eradicate them because they're here in uh, too much abundance. And as I said, I mean, I don't think we'll ever get rid of them in Missouri, but even if we would, up at the Great Lakes, up in other areas. So, I mean, the good, they do filter water, but the problem is they form in such large numbers that here they
Mhm.
filter out, as I said, they filter out a lot of those organisms that are needed in our food chain.
Right.
The other main problem, non-recreational, non-biological, is the economic problem. They can form on water filtration
Yeah.
systems because on those devices there is a flow of water. What they're looking for is a constant flow of water. As that water flows through their
Mhm.
open shell, they filter feed. They extract these little organisms out of the water. They feed them on.
Sure.
Well, on a lot of civic city devices, there is that water intake. So there's that
Mhm.
constant flow. That's an excellent place for them to attach to get feed, to get food items. It's a terrible place for them to attach if you're looking at it from the functioning of a equipment.
Well, that gets back to your point, the primary point again about making sure you may not even see them if on your trailer, on your boat, on your kayak, on your canoe, but you've got to take the time to dry them off and clean them off.
Right. And you're not just doing that for other anglers, other boaters. You're doing that for you. Because obviously, if you have a fishing boat, if you have a kayak, you like to enjoy the water. You like to be in the best quality possible. So, I mean, yes, it's always good to think of the broader picture. You're helping everybody out, but you are doing it for yourself too. So, keep that in mind. You're helping yourself out when you do this.
It's there's also weeds. I'm trying to think of the name. What is it? Manfoil or manifoil? What's the weed? There's
Uh,
an
the
invasive
exotic weed,
weed. I'm sorry.
the is it a non-native species weed?
Yeah, it's that's affected like Minnesota and Wisconsin, the same kind of thing where the weeds came in on these ships, found their way into the Great
Right,
Lakes, and
right.
then not unlike the zebra mussel, they attach themselves. As any fisherman knows, as many real bass you catch a lot of weed bass as well. And all of
Right,
a sudden, these weeds end up on your trailer and on your boats.
right,
It
right,
sounds to me like just the practice of cleaning everything off every time
right.
makes sense.
And yes, you're right. And as I said in the latter part of this show, not to give them a little bit of a cliffhanger here, we will talk about an aquatic vegetative species, a
Okay.
weed that clean, drain, dry is the same advice. They attach themselves to boats, to trailers, and they can transport themselves to other bodies of water. We barely got them in Missouri. It's a very interesting story.
Yeah.
It's because it kind of ties into Greene County, in fact. So
You got people on the edge of their seats, whether they're driving or they're sitting at home. Francis, thank you. We'll be back in a moment with more on Around the Ozarks Spotlight. I'm your host, Scott Meier. Back in just a minute.
Okay, now
Welcome back to part 2 of today's Around the Ozarks Spotlight. You can see and hear my guest, Francis Skalicky. Francis is with us again because there's so many things he can talk about having to do with the Missouri Department of Conservation as their media specialist. And we spent the first half of the show talking about zebra mussels, but the second part is hydrilla. Is that correct?
that is correct. Hydrilla? That is correct.
And let me open the gates for you, Francis, to bring us up to speed from the very beginning. What is hydrilla and why is it an issue?
Hydrilla is an herbaceous perennial. It's a non-native aquatic plant, and the issue is we could do a whole short story of this too. It's wherever it's found. It grows very fast. It can grow up to 1 inch per day, and it grows in these huge, they're called whorls, but basically these plant masses. And they can block out, they block out sunlight. They basically screw up habitat from an aquatic standpoint. So they screw it up for the fish. They can also, as we talked earlier about zebra mussels, they can also get in intake valves of city water systems, and they can cause problems for that too. But the interesting thing about hydrilla is it initially was found in Greene County and hardly any place else. There's several interesting things about hydrilla. I'll just go on. You can stop me, Scott. But
no, this is interesting.
Okay. How it originally got here in North America. It is from India. It's initially from India. It was originally an aquarium plant. In other words, a plant they sold for aquariums.
Oh, for God's sake! Yes.
They thought it got here in North America by people dumping their aquariums.
Sure.
You have a fish, you can't take care of it for whatever reason. You dump it in the water, nearby stream, thinks, oh, well, whatever is in there will have a good life in the stream. Well, that's a great way to get things we don't want in our native waters. And hydrilla, we're pretty sure that's how it got here in North America. It also spreads by waterfowl. Waterfowl can get parts of it on their body and stuff like that. The three-way it spreads by plant fragmentation. In other words, parts of the plants can spread it. Tubers and turions. Tubers can be buried in the sediment. Those can stay vibrant for up to several years. I mean, maybe 5-6 years, something like that. But the fragmentation, that means the plant parts can attach to boats, to trailers, and we can carry it to other bodies of water. Now, getting back to Greene County. It was found here. I want to say it was in 2017, somewhere around in there.
Oh, so this is recent. This is new.
Yes, this is recent. We found it in private ponds in Greene County. Somebody didn't know what they had, and they brought it to us and said, this is hydrilla. So we started looking for it elsewhere in the state. It would stand to reason that, yes, Greene County is a very relatively metropolitan county with Springfield. Sure. St. Louis and Kansas City are higher metropolitan areas. So whatever people are doing, dumping aquariums or, waterfowl transference, that's also happening up there. We did not find it any place but Greene County, Missouri. I know it's a mystery. Wow. Yes. We found it pretty thickly. We found it like about 37 ponds, private ponds, because we got permission to landowners to look, and it was in like northern Greene County. It's just odd why it was only here, but nevertheless it was here. So we one way you can treat it, it's with fluoridone tablet. It's a type of herbicide that if it's administered at the right dosage, it just you put the tablets in the water, they break up, they affect hydrilla. But it has to be at the right dosage. Our native plants are hardy enough that they can withstand this herbicide treatment. Hydrilla cannot. We were actually told I don't know the people, and I'm glad I don't, because I don't want to demean them, but some people in other states, if you got hydrilla, you're just going to have to learn to live with it because you cannot get rid of it. Florida is the case study for what they have. They spent like, I want to say, what is it, $20 million a year just treating hydrilla. I'm sorry, Scott, I should have this. Over a 7-year period, Florida spent $66 million just controlling hydrilla. That's not eradicating it, just keeping it where it is right now. So
$66 million.
$66 million over a 7-year period. That was a study from the University of Florida Institute of Food and Agriculture Sciences.
So hydrilla is hydrilla confined to local ponds, or is hydrilla?
No. What happens is we find it in ponds, but ponds can do two things. Number one, there are streams sometimes that feed into that. They can spread out like that. Also through flooding events, when we get a lot of rain, which
Sure.
we've had a lot of rainy springs. When we get a lot of rain, they can overflow and flow and get out into the streams. And you think northern Greene County, that's such a strategic area. There are streams that flow to Stockton. There are streams that flow to Table Rock. There are streams that flow to Pomme de Terre. That one area of northern Greene County, that's kind of the source for a lot of water flowing to some major reservoirs in this area. Mm-hmm. And that could very easily happen. But so far we've found it, just like I say, and it's been found in Warren County, which is up in St. Louis. It's actually been found in a pond in Johnson County, which at Powell Gardens, which is commercial water plant area, greenhouse. But the big thing is still found in Greene County. We have, let's see here. I'm sorry, but we began treating hydrilla with fluoridone. First, what we do, we throw out rakes. We see if we had plants. And a lot of these places, wherever we had, we treat it every summer with this precise dose of fluoridone that will knock out hydrilla, not hurt native plants. So far in our eradication process, 23 of the 37 Missouri hydrilla sites, most of which are in Greene County, have been reclassified as monitor-only sites. In other words, it's not being found there. We still monitor them because, as I just said, those tubers can stay vibrant in the soil for a number of years. So we have to monitor them. So the point with all these numbers and procedural jibber-jabber is this is a battle we're winning. Most times, when an invasive species come here, it is a case we're going to have to learn how to keep it from spreading because it's here. But this is a plant that we are knocking out. And like I say, we have hopes of completely eradicating it from Missouri. It will always be in North America, and I think it's found like in 29 states. So it is here to stay, but that doesn't mean it has to be here in Missouri.
My guest you're hearing today on Around the Ozarks Spotlight is Francis Skalicky. Francis, the head of communications in this part of Missouri for the Missouri Department of Conservation. Francis, you've been doing this for a while. Have you seen other good stories about things that have invaded our area waterways that maybe we've been able to knock out or at least control?
Well, anything that comes here, I'd have to think about what we've been able to knock out. I don't know. I mean, there's always you hear about invasive carp. You hear about rusty crayfish, which they're all it seems like once they've been found here, even if we don't find them, we're still on the alert for them. So as far as like a success story, we've knocked it out. We don't need to worry about it anymore. I don't think we'll ever reach that level because they're always someplace else in North America, and our fishing traffic is transitory enough that if it's not here, there's still a chance it could be brought in from other states. So we need to be on the lookout for it here. So as far as success story, I can't really think of anything where we knocked it out. We're done with it. Right. Don't have to worry about it anymore. But it's just, and our fishermen are good stewards. I mean, they love their lakes. They love their fishing. So it's, when we put out these kind of words, we get a lot of, okay, sure. It's just, we don't get why do we have to do this? We've been out on the water all day, blah, blah, blah. But we get a lot of cooperation. So that's what I've always said about the citizens of Missouri, whether we're talking about aquatic invasive species or chronic wasting disease or whatever with deer.
Yeah.
Citizens get it. What I've always said is our citizens get why conservation is so important, why what we do is so important. And because I understand it, that makes our job so much easier.
Now, I did read an exciting story the other day. It looks like sturgeon are making a comeback.
Yes, sturgeon are making a comeback. I don't have a lot of information on that, but we We have raised them in some of our hatcheries, and they're a big river fish. They're a prehistoric fish. They're kind of like paddlefish in the sense that they do date back to the dinosaurs. They are making a comeback in some areas. So yeah, that's a good success story. And we have, it's not all doom and gloom. I mean, obviously you can bass fishing is great. Trout fishing is great. Crappie fishing is super. I mean, people love their crappie fishing.
And don't give up on the walleye. That's my personal
walleye,
favorite.
yes, and walleye are great too.
In this part of Missouri, we've got some wonderful walleye.
We have walleye is kind of Stockton is kind of the premier walleye lake.
Right.
We have walleye in Table Rock. We have walleye in Bull Shoals and Truman. So yeah, we have walleye down here, and they're great to catch. They're great to eat. So we have good fishing here. So it's like I say, in addition to when we tell people you got to watch out for this, you got to watch out. We also want to tell people you got to enjoy this. We had a lot to enjoy. We're very blessed down here in the southwest part of the state to have a lot of good fishing areas within a relatively close drive. So get out and enjoy them.
You hit it on the head, Francis. There's so many places around here where you can take, whether you're on a boat or you're just on a fishing dock, especially even for crappies, where you can catch them almost anywhere.
Well,
and they're good eating fish. I got to ask you, one of the difficulties for Missouri is we're bordered by so many states where fishermen come into our state to fish, as they should.
Right.
Now, how do we know they follow the rules? Because they've got to be facing the same issues that we are here.
Well, it's just, we kind of got to trust. It's a trust that they're good stewards of the water and good conscientious sportsmen. And a lot of people coming from other states, they have that same interest, that same passion for fishing, the same, I use the word stewardship, which implies they kind of care about what they're fishing on. So, I guess the best way we can get that message to them is just have the message out. And they go online to buy permits, or they get our brochures. All those places, they have these messages about zebra mussels, about hydrilla, about other, don't dump your bait. All these ways that exotic species get introduced into the water. So we hope they follow, So.
And I think you would agree, a lot of it really comes down to common sense.
Right.
These are things, the water is so precious, and the waterways we have are so precious. And you can see if they're having difficulty in the ocean, how much difficulty you can have in inland lakes.
Right. And I will say, getting back to the hydrilla for a minute, the don't dump your aquarium, to some people that would seem like, what, I can't take care of whatever is in this aquarium. I'm going to put it in a bigger body of water. They got more room to swim. They got more room to grow. Yeah. That's going to be a great idea. But it's not, because it's a great way to introduce something that's not supposed to be there into that water system. And in this day and age, where you, through social media, through pet shops that are very aware of these things,
sure.
You can either go to your local pet shop and say, hey, how can I transfer my aquarium maybe to somebody else? Or you can just put it on a social media. I've got gobies or whatever. I've got these fish. I can't take care of them. Would somebody else be interested in taking care of it? And I would almost guarantee that you will get some hits. Sure. Connect with me and we can do it. So my point is, you don't just have to dump it. There's enough other ways to get rid of this stuff that you don't just have to dump it in the local stream.
Francis, we're almost out of time. Can you send people in a direction to get more information on Missouri waterways?
Yes. Best way is on our website, mdc.mo.gov. Or you can just get whatever search engine you use, enter Missouri Department of Conservation. That'll get you to our website. Here in Springfield, you can call our Southwest Regional Office at 417-895-6880. We have people who can talk to you over the phone, too.
Francis, you'll come back again?
You betcha. I love being here.
Excellent. Love having you here. I want to thank my guests today on Around the Ozarks Spotlight, Francis Skalicky, also my producer, Taylor Worley, and Jay Stevens, as well as all of you for joining us today. If you happen to miss any or part of today's program, you can find it in its entirety on the MidwestFamilySpringfield.com website, the AroundTheOzarks.com site. our new app for ATO, which can be found in the Apple App Store or the Android Store, or also on our Facebook, where you can watch as well as hear today's program. Thanks for listening. Thanks for being part of it. And hopefully you'll get a chance to listen to some of our last shows as well. I'm Scott Meier. Remember, every day is a gift. Enjoy life. Thanks again, Francis.
Thanks.